Hey guys, welcome to Spiguyver Backpacking. I'm Mark, and today we're going to be talking about tarps. This is episode number 5 in our Hammock How-To series, and today we're going to talk about different types of tarps, different ways to string them up, different suspension systems, different ways to store them. So let's get into this. So tarps. Tarps are important for a couple of reasons. One, they're what protect you from the rain in a storm. Two, they can protect you from strong winds, and even in some conditions, they can protect you from sun. You know, if you're in a really hot environment, sometimes you can put it up on one side to create a little bit of a shade, but they're there as protection from the elements. Kind of like a tent around you when you're ground camping. A tarp can be used for ground camping as well. I primarily use mine for hammock camping, and that's why it's part of this Hammock How-To series. So, what I have behind me here, this is an Underground Quilts Sil Poly 11-foot hanger tarp. It's a hex shape. It's custom done in different colors, and that's the cool thing. A lot of these cottage industry vendors that we have within the hammock industry will do everything. They'll go out of their way to make things custom and make things exactly the way that you want them. I've got it strung up with a continuous ridgeline. So the continuous ridgeline that I'm using here is one that I got from Underground Quilts. And the way that this one works is it has loop aliens on both sides. And the loop aliens are a piece of hardware that you can use to make the adjustments. Right now it is in what's known as a snakeskin. This one actually is a single piece one. You can get single piece or two piece snakeskins. I prefer the single piece snakeskin because it's much easier to get on, get off, and it doesn't create, when you use the two piece ones, they meet in the middle and it creates a big bulge in the middle. This one, the way that these work, seems to be very, very easy to me. I have not had any problems using this type of snakeskin. And as a matter of fact, I just bought another one for my new tarp. I was trying to go a different route, and I'll show you that on here, but I decided to go back to the tried and true snakeskin. What's nice about the snakeskin is it makes setup and tear down really fast, but it also allows you, if you're not sure whether or not the elements are going to get the better of you, you know, you don't know whether or not it's going to rain overnight. Forecast is calling kind of 50-50. It doesn't look like it when you go to bed, but you don't want to get woke up in the middle of the night to rain falling on you. You can actually string your tarp up just like you have right here, and then if it does start raining, you simply slide the snakeskin back and tarp it or stake it out. Now what you can even do to be even more prepared is before you go to bed, stake it out, get the stakes and the lines exactly where you want them and how you want them, then disconnect it, put it back into the snakeskin, so then you've got your stakes already where they need to be for that quick deployment. So let's see how easy it is to take this out of the snakeskin. Now to take this tarp out of the snakeskin, you're going to come down and there's a barrel lock down on the fat end. Undo it, spread open, and start pulling it. So what I'll do is I'll actually walk all the way down. I'll just kind of pull it a little bit. I'll walk all the way down to the small end, pull it off of the end of it, and then just start pulling it towards me. And that's all there is to deploying it when you've got it in a snakeskin. Now, to put it back into the snakeskin, you simply grab the end of it and walk it down. Now, if you have any lines on there, you'll want to watch that you don't have the lines in there, and then once you get to the end, cinch it back down, and you're ready to go. Very quick, very easy deployment. I really like and recommend these to anybody. Now, on this continuous ridgeline, one of the cool things about using a continuous ridgeline, this one has a system that toggles on a prusik. And what that allows you to do is, you can see right now it's not centered between these two trees. It's closer to that tree than to this tree. And so if I had my hammock under here, there's a possibility that this end would be out. So what you would do is you would come down to your prusik knot, and you can see this prusik knot right here. If I pinch the end of it, I can slide it. So I'll slide it down about that far, walk back down to this side, grab the inside of this prusik, and pull it until it tightens up. Now, I don't want to go quite that far, so I'm going to go back a little bit. And there, it's nice and tight, and it's a lot more centered than where it was. Actually, it looks pretty centered right there. And so now if I want to go ahead and deploy it, I can deploy it, stake it out, and that's going to work really well for me. So let's see how I stake out my tarp. Now I have different systems that I use for different tarps. For this tarp, I have these stakes, which have Dutch tarp hooks on the ends of them. So this line is fixed to it. This line happens to be a reflective yellow line that I like to use. And I've got the Dutch hooks, if you can see them here, that I have at the end of those. And what I'll do is at each corner of the underground quilts, they have two of these little rings. And what those do is they equalize the tension so that there's no weird tension being put onto your pullouts. So I'll use that and stake it out with these. So what I'll do is I will unroll the line completely down to just the stake, okay? And then I will hook this through those two loops, okay? So now I've got that tensioned out. So I've got that through there, and then I'll pull it and figure out where I want to put my stake. And once I have my stake in the ground, I slide this line, or I pull the line through until it's tight. Now once it's tight, with these guys, you make a little loop, slide it over the tail of the hook, and that holds it tight. And then if you want to make an adjustment, or you want to strike it, you simply pull, and it releases, and now you can make whatever adjustments you want. So I'm going to go ahead and stake out the rest of them and show you guys how I do that. Pinch it off. Or here's what this tarp looks like fully set up. So I've got the four corners pulled out, I've got the continuous ridge line up there, and I've got it pulled tight there. Now what you will notice, and I've seen questions about this several times, the continuous ridge line is above the ridge line of the tarp. And that's because there is a cat cut. You can see that it's closer on the ends than it is in the middle. There's a cat cut to the tarp that helps it shed wind and rain a little bit better. And if you had this underneath it, it would fight against that cat cut and wouldn't give you quite as nice of a pull to hang this out. So this is a hex tarp, which means no doors on it. But this is a wide body, so it's a little bit wider. And so you can set it up several different ways. You could go further out, you could go closer in, you go closer in, and you can get it closer to the ground so that the thing with right here, with it being, you know, 1.5 feet off the ground, if there's hard rain that's coming in, it could splash off the ground and come up. If you get this really low to the ground, you can kind of seal it off a little bit better. Or if it's a really nice day, you can use your trekking poles and set this up in porch mode. So let's see how that would work. Now to set up your tarp in porch mode, that means one side would be kind of open. You don't need trekking poles, but you would need something to tie off to. Trekking poles make it really easy. I'm not going to go through and adjust these to the full length. I'm going to go ahead and do this with them at the length that I hike at, just so you guys can see what it is that I'm going to do here. All right, so let's do this. Now the way that I have it set up right here is in like a semi porch mode or a low porch mode. And what this allows is for you to be in your hammock or sleeping under here and be able to look out and see the world. And if you've got other people in hammocks that are around, you know, it makes it a little bit easier to communicate. You can see each other and talk without having to talk through a piece of nylon or sil poly in this case. So this is a 1.1 Sil Poly tarp, if I didn't mention that before. The cool thing about doing porch mode like this is that if it was going to rain a little bit, not a downpour, but a little bit of rain, you know, and you're in here in your hammock, as long as the wind isn't blowing, this creates a nice big area. So if you're doing a longer hike and it's been raining a couple of days and you're just kind of sick of it and you want to stay out of it a little bit, you know, you could set up like this, be in camp, in your hammock, get out of your hammock, have your ground cloth or whatever, and cook right under here. Now, no one recommends cooking underneath the tarps, but when you're out doing a long hike, you have to do things like that because that's just part of the day-to-day living out there. So this is porch mode. Now, a subject that comes up that I get questions on quite a bit when it comes to your tarp and with hammock camping in general is how do you set up if it's already raining? Well, hopefully, if it was raining and you had camped last night, so say the previous night you set up, you knew it was going to start raining, but it wasn't raining yet, so you had the tarp up, it rained overnight, and you packed everything up. Hopefully you have your pack organized like I would, which is tarp, hammock suspension, stakes, all that stuff on the outside of your pack. Everything that you want to stay dry on the inside. Now, if you don't have room on the outside for some of this stuff, you can put it on the inside as long as there's a barrier between the dry and the wet. And so what a lot of people will use, and I use as well, are trash compactor bags. So all of your down, all of your insulation, your hammock will be inside of a trash compactor bag, rolled, pushed down, and then anything wet could be on top of it so that it's protected. But this is the optimal way, is to have it on the outside. So I get to camp, I find my spot, get my 2 trees set up, set my bag down. Now I'm going to set it down so that it isn't getting wet inside of it. So I'm going to grab my tarp out of my bag and I'm going to unwind the lines that I have wrapped around it and get it ready to hang. Now meanwhile, I've probably still got my poncho or rain jacket on. So I grab one end and I go about the height that I think I want it. Get that end set up and I'll just unroll it out. I'm trying not to get it on the ground just because I don't want my snakeskin on the ground. I'm going to cinch down my buckles on there. Now I've got it pretty well set up. I'd make any adjustments I needed to center it up on that continuous ridge line. Now I'm going to deploy the tarp. Just like we did before. Just like before, I'm going to pull it out. Now if it's raining, there's going to be one difference in the way that I do my stakes. Rather than running the entire line out, when I put them away, I have the line wrapped all the way around my stake with the hook all the way at the knot. And so what I will do in this situation, just to speed up deployment, is I will hook through, let out as much line as I need to, and stake it. Do the same thing on the next one. Get the loops together, put it over, let out as much line as I need to, and stake that one. At this point, I've got the tarp covering enough that I'm going to move my bag inside so that it's now protected. If it was open, nothing's getting in it. Okay, so now the tarp is set up. Now it's not perfect, and you can make adjustments afterwards, but as long as you can get it up, that's the first step. Now next is setting up the hammock while it's raining. So let's look at how we do that. Now that I have my suspension up, what I'll do is I will open up my backpack, and now for the first time I will get into the dry section. And so now that I'm in the dry section, I can grab my hammock. Still leaving my backpack well covered under here. Decide which end is going to be my head end. So I think that, I want this end to be my head end. This is my head end to my tarp, or on my hammock, and I've got that marked because of this little bean around here. So I'll grab this line. I know I want to be somewhere pretty high up on this end, so that when I string out the other side, I'm still covered inside. So I'll come up here, Beckett, hitch it on, open up my double-ended stuff sack and go to the other side. So I come over here, again grab that, pull my line through, adjust to where I need to be, and get that set. Now it's a little bit low right now. I'm going to go ahead and make another adjustment over here. So you can see, you can do it. Now, at this point, I can see that it's hanging a little bit low. I probably want to go out on each side and raise my suspension on my tree. Okay, as much as I can to get to a little bit better angle. And that's all there is to it. Worst comes to worst, this will work. It's keeping you off the ground. You're going to be dry. I've got my knot inside underneath here, which is something I want to pay attention to. So that's one way to do it while it's raining. So I showed you guys how to put the tarp up and how to take it down, how to put it in and out of the snakeskin. But what about actually taking it down and putting it away? Now you saw that I had mine rolled. Some people like to just take it down and kind of scrunch it up, throw it in the outside of their pack. Other people will have a stuff sack that then after they fold this up, it goes into the stuff sack. To me, I think that the extra stuff sack is a little bit redundant, and by doing the rolling it the way that I do, if it was wet, it pushes some of that water out. Not all of it, but some of it out. So let's go ahead and take this one down, and I'll show you guys how I roll it up. So to take this one down, because of the loop aliens, it's real easy. You just grab the line, strike it, pull the loop off, and that's that. I'll show a good close-up of that so that you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. Then I just kind of come down, take it off of this end. You can see that it's real easy to get that off. Now I will fold this just about in half. If anything, I'll favor the long end a little bit. And then just to keep it off the ground, I'll put it between my legs and then just start rolling it. Now I've got the fat end as what would be the outside, and the smaller, skinnier end rolls up on the inside. Keeps it a little bit neater. I just keep rolling it down until I get to the end. Once I get to the end, I've got these lines, and I just wrap the lines around. And now it's ready to go back into my bag. Teardown was quick, simple, and it's already set up. When I go to take it and put it back up, I just unwind the line like I showed, string it up, and as long as these trees are about this distance and about this size, no adjustments really have to be made. If adjustments have to be made, they're actually pretty easy, and we'll take a look at that as well. Now the next tarp I want us to take a look at is a Cuben fiber tarp. So this one is super lightweight. Again, I have a continuous ridgeline on it. I have a snakeskin on it. This snakeskin happens to be Cuben fiber. Now I did a review of the Cuben fiber versus the mesh sleeve snakeskin, and I'm going to put that right up here so you guys can go take a look at that. There are definitely some advantages to the mesh, I will say that. but I've kept the Cuben fiber one on the Cuben fiber tarp. And so let's take a look at how we set this one up. So continuous ridgeline on this one. This is a Hammock gear standard tarp with doors. So the big advantage to this one is it has doors, so I can completely close it off almost like a tent. This one has a continuous ridgeline from Dutchware gear. And so let's take a look at how we set this one up. Again, I fold it up, I wind it up exactly the same way that I did the last tarp. So this one has not been adjusted for these trees at all. So you'll get to see exactly how I go about setting it up. So you've got two lines that come off. One of them has a Dutch clip on it. And they were nice, and the lines were nice together, and I just kind of knotted them up as I pulled on it. So I'll take the end that goes to the first tree. I'm going to put this down here in between my legs to hold it so I have both hands to work with. I'm going to go around the tree, and it's as simple as just clipping it into the Dutch clip. Now I can tell right now that I had it either around a much larger tree or they were much further apart the last time I set them up. So what I'm going to have to do is, knowing that, I'm going to slide this prusik way down, because I know it's going to need to be somewhere in this neighborhood. So I moved that one quite a bit. I'm going to have to move this one quite a bit as well. So I can go ahead and do that until I feel a little bit of tension on that. So right there's some tension there. Now I can make the final adjustments on this where it sits after I get it up. So there's a piece of hardware, a Dutch wasp, on this end. And so what I've got to do is figure out where I need it. So right now it's way too far down. So I'll put that under there, undo the lock that's on it, and slide it down the line till I get it about where I think it's going to need to be. And that should be pretty good. I'm going to redo the lock on there. And now it's as simple as coming to my other tree, around the tree, through the beak of the wasp, and under its wing, and it's locked in. So now I can make the adjustments that I need to. If I wanted to center it a little bit more, I can't go too far that way because of where I put the wasp. I've only got about an inch, so I'm just going to go about an inch that way just to show you can make some more adjustments. And there you go. It's up. It's ready to be deployed. It's a little bit higher than I normally have it. Normally I can't walk underneath it, but that's okay. Same thing as with the other tarp. Open up the end, just start pulling it back, get it off this side, and pull it off. Now, one difference you'll notice almost immediately is that I have lines on here. I have hardware attached to the tarp. I have pullouts on this tarp. The other one, I just had the tarp by itself and there were no lines attached to it, no hardware attached to it. So I actually use a different set of stakes and a different pitching technique with this one. So let's take a look at that. Now with this tarp, I already have 3 of the corners pitched out just so that I could show you what I do on the corners. Now on each of these corners, each of the 4 corners, I have a shock cord loop with a tarp worm on it. Now I know a lot of people will say you don't need shock cord for this tarp because it is Cuben fiber, it does not stretch. Sil poly really doesn't stretch either. Sil nylon, when it would get wet or after setting it up, would stretch a little bit, and so these made it really nice to be able to have the tension on there. What I do use these for though is these are expensive tarps, and it's a little bit of an insurance policy for me to keep the wind from tearing at it if I get into really bad winds, which I have been in some pretty serious winds. So the way that this works is I have this on here and I will stake it out. I have the line attached already to my stakes, and these are groundhog stakes and then I'll just kind of unwind enough line. They're 1.75, really small line, and you put the line through the hole in the tarp worm, and then you pull it till it's tight, pinch it off so that you can then make the loop just like you did with the tarp hook, and that holds it. Now we've got it set up, but we've got these doors just kind of flapping here. So door management is something that a lot of people wonder about. How do you deal with your doors? So let's take a look at this from the inside. So I have shock cord with a loop on each end. And so there's different things that you can do with this. There are different ways that you can set these up. But the way that I do it is I take my loop and I go to my tarp worm and I just loop it over that tarp worm. Same thing on this side. So the loop goes outside and loops over the end of that tarp worm, and it locks it in even harder. So now we've got the doors closed. You can see there's a little gap right up here, and that's where the suspension of your hammock will come through. So now if you've got it pitched low enough and tight enough, this is going to block any rain or wind coming from the sides. Now what about on those days when you don't want the doors closed? You want it open, you want that breeze. You know, it's a muggy, hot summer day, and you want to feel that breeze. So here's how I do. So you've got your doors on both sides, and today is a day where there's a little bit of a breeze, it's a little bit warm, and I want to take advantage of that. So I don't want my doors closed, and I don't want them just flapping there in the wind. So that same elastic shock cord that I use to keep the doors open or closed, I'll use to keep them open. So I've got the two pieces, and I'll put one loop through the other, and now they're inside. And if it was to change and I didn't want them inside anymore, I just grab it and they go down. So real easy tarp management, door management. Good stuff. Now one other thing that this tarp has that the other tarps that I have shown you didn't have is this pull out. Now what this does is it really increases the area, the room inside of the tarp when you pull these out. It also helps when there's winds, it isn't going to get pushed in with the wind. So the way that I use these is I use my trekking pole, and I'll stab my trekking pole into the ground. I'll make a loop, go over that, and then I've got a stake with a loop that will pull just like this and go down to the ground and be staked into the ground. Now I don't have those with me today, but you can see the difference. You can see where it's pulled out to and then when it falls in. And you get about a foot extra space there. So let's see that from the inside. Let's see how much extra space it gives you when you're looking at it from the inside. With them not deployed and with them pulled out. See how it falls in and it comes out. While this is an absolutely amazing lightweight tarp, it doesn't have the most coverage of all the tarps. This is only an 11-foot ridgeline. At the time I bought it, I was only using a 10 and a 10.5 foot hammock, so it didn't make any sense to go with the 11-foot or the 12-foot. Now I am using 11-foot hammocks, and the 11-foot hammocks do still work with this one, but I only use this one if I'm going out somewhere where I want to stay lightweight, or I'm expecting some pretty nasty storms where I want the doors closed. It's also a great winter tarp because of the doors being able to close. Now, I would say if you're on the fence between an 11 and 12 foot, go with the 12 foot. That extra coverage will come in handy. But you can see it's not a wide tarp. It doesn't go super low to the ground. So you've got to be pretty creative with how you hang it and how you get it set up. Otherwise, you could get some splashback or some stuff blowing underneath. So you want to try and get it as low as possible and get it so that you can get the doors nicely snugged up. Now that hex hanger tarp from Underground Quilts that I showed has much wider coverage, but it doesn't have the doors, and it's also 11 feet. So I wanted something that has a little bit more coverage, and so I went with the Underground Quilts 12-foot hex hanger tarp. So let's take a look at that one, and that one is in the membrane 0.93, so it's kind of between the Cuben fiber and the sil poly. It's kind of that in-between fabric that it's still super lightweight, but you get a pretty good amount of coverage, and it actually packs down quite a bit smaller than the Cuben fiber. Let's see. So I wanted to show you my new tarp. So this is my new tarp. I've got it in a Cuben fiber double-ended stuff sack so that it can be opened from both ends. So just showing a different way to store it. Rather than using the snakeskins, you could do it this way. The difference between doing it this way or with the snakeskins is this one can't be deployed up above and just be there waiting for a storm and then be easily deployed. This one you have to set up if you put it up. So I've got the lines wrapped around it. I'm using some red zinget, and I've got some Dutch tarp flies on there. And so let's go ahead and set this one up and take a look at the coverage that this one provides. Now this will be only the second time I've set this one up, and the first time was in my backyard, and so I'm excited to see how this one works. Now this one is a 12-foot. Now I'm not sure where I'm actually going to need the lines at, so this one's more of a trial and error, guess and check type deal. Now I can see that I've got this fly way too far out, and so I need to make an adjustment. I'm trying not to let this hit the ground too much. It is a little bit more fragile of a fabric than the Sil Poly, so I really don't want to damage it. Okay, so there, it is now deployed, and now we can make the adjustments. Now, if we take a step back and look at it, it's pretty close to being centered, but if it wasn't, the difference between this one and the ones on continuous ridgeline, the continuous ridgelines, we just moved a prusik, and we were able to center it. This one, you have to disconnect the end, make an adjustment, so you'd have to loosen one end quite a bit so it's sagging, then go and tighten the other end, and take a look, and maybe do that back and forth several times to get it right. It's a lot easier if you've got the continuous ridgeline, but this is another option, and it's a slightly lighter option. So something to think about. So let's stake this one out and see what kind of coverage you've got. You can see it's a good long 12-foot tarp, wide, super wide body. So let's get this thing staked out and see what we got here. So here we go. Wow, this thing is huge. I went ahead and seam sealed it myself, and here, this thing is ready for some action, ready to get out here and be put to the test. Super lightweight fabric. You saw how small it compressed down to. I mean, it's an amazing fabric. And if you look inside, the fabric just creates this nice glow. To me, it's really inviting, and the area that it covers is just huge. I mean, it's by far the biggest tarp I've got, and I think it's going to do absolutely wonderful for me. So I've shown you a couple of different kinds of tarps. 2 hex tarps, one in 11 foot, one in 12 foot. Both of them are wide body. Then I showed you the Cuben fiber tarp, which had doors. That was the big difference. Forget about the fabric. You can get any of these tarps in any fabric you really want. But the difference there was the doors. This one's got more coverage just because it's wider and longer. But the doors do make a difference. It's something that I would definitely consider if you're out there looking and you have the money. And if you have the money, I suggest going with the Cuben fiber if you're doing any backpacking at all. It reduces your weight so significantly. It's just, if you've got the money, I think it's worth it. And a lot of people complain that it's fragile or think that it's very fragile. It's not. I mean, I've had mine for quite a while now. It's been abused. It's been used quite a bit. You know, it's hit the ground several times, and it's still going strong. No tears, no holes, no rips, nothing of that sort. So just go with what you can afford, what suits your needs. Now, there are different types of tarps. You can get like the edge tarp, which is a very minimal, more of a triangle type tarp than a hex tarp. Or diamond shape really is what it would be. Hennessy makes some for their tarps or for their hammocks that are a diamond pattern that are very, very minimal coverage. And if you're looking to go ultralight, you can go that way and get away with it. But when it gets down to a really stormy night, blowing, whipping winds with heavy torrential rains, you don't have quite the coverage there, and you could be getting yourself into a situation where you get wet. You may be willing to sacrifice that for the lightweight and the small packability of those. And if that's the case, weigh your options. Weigh what you're looking for, what you're wanting to get out of it with the price and with the cost and with the benefits and the negatives, the pros and cons. Weigh them all and figure out what you need. So guys, this has been the hammock how-to on tarps. There are a lot of different tarps out there. Figure out what works for you and go with it. If you guys have any questions, any comments, please leave them down below. I've been putting them together. We just did a Q&A session where I answered some of the questions that people had, and I want to make sure that I'm getting your answers out there to you. So post up your comments below. I'll either hit them now, or I'm going to have a follow-up video where I actually go into talking about what some of the questions that people had in regards to the hammock how-to videos and some extra pieces, some things that I may have missed as I was doing these videos, or that just would add to it and make it a more robust, complete how-to series. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in, checking in. Again, comments, leave them down below. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, I'd really appreciate that. And share this video. If you know people that are getting into hammock camping, give this video to them. Send it to them. Put it out there on the forums that you like to visit doing with hammocks. Anyway, guys, I'll see you down the trail. Thanks.